The rain hammered against the cobblestones like 1,000 angry fists, each drop a cold accusation. The storm had come without warning, turning the familiar street into something hostile and unrecognizable. Just like my life, just like everything the Cole family had done to me. I crouched beneath the overhang of a closed shop, my daughter Delta pressed against my chest. She was shivering, whether from cold or fear. I couldn't tell anymore. At 7 years old, she had learned to cry silently. That broke me more than anything else. Her small hands clutched my soaked cardigan, and I could feel her rapid heartbeat against my ribs. The gate. That massive iron gate with the Cole family crest had slammed shut 20 minutes ago, the sound still reverberating in my skull. Final. Unforgiving. A door closed on 10 years of my life. Before I continue, let me tell you, this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about survival. About the moment you realize the people you trusted most were your greatest enemies all along. Stay with me. The ending will change everything you think you know. Mrs. Elena Cole's words still burned in my ears, caustic and deliberate. Get out of my sight, Jessie. Take your bastard child and disappear. You've been bleeding this family dry for long enough. Bastard child. Delta. My beautiful, innocent Delta, who had Hakimi's eyes and his gentle smile. The granddaughter Elena had once cradled in the hospital, tears streaming down her face as she whispered promises of love and protection. That woman was gone. Or maybe she had never existed. My worn suitcase lay in a puddle, 15 feet away, contents spilling into the gutter. A child's stuffed rabbit. A faded photograph. Hakimi's old watch that had stopped working 3 years after he vanished. All of it ruined now, drowning in the storm just like me. Mr. Richard Cole had stood in the doorway during the entire ordeal, silent. His face turned away as his wife hurled insults and accusations. That silence was worse than her venom. It was permission. It was agreement. It was the final betrayal. What had I done to deserve this? What crime had I committed in those 10 years? Since the day Hakimi disappeared, vanished without explanation on what was supposed to be a routine business trip to Chicago, I had dedicated every breath to honoring his memory and caring for his parents. 10 years. A decade of my life poured into maintaining the illusion that we were still a family. I had transformed myself from a young bride with dreams and ambitions into something unrecognizable. I rose before sunrise to prepare elaborate breakfasts Elena rarely touched. I scrubbed floors until my knees ached and my hands cracked and bled. I worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria, my nursing degree gathering dust, because Elena insisted I needed to contribute to the household, rather than pursue selfish career fantasies. Every paycheck, every single dollar, I handed to Elena. She controlled everything. The money, the groceries, even Delta's clothes and school supplies required her approval. I owned nothing. I was nothing. When Elena complained that my cooking lacked flavor, I took classes I couldn't afford. And when she criticized my appearance as common and embarrassing, I wore the same 3 outfits until they literally fell apart, too ashamed to ask for money to replace them. When she lamented, loudly, cruelly, in front of relatives and neighbors, that I had only managed to produce one child before her precious son disappeared, I swallowed the rage and the grief and said nothing. I believed. God help me. I believed that suffering had value, that sacrifice would be rewarded, that if I just tried hard enough, gave enough, bled enough, they would eventually see me as family. I thought they would love Delta the way grandparents should. I was a fool. I was too naive to understand that, in a house built on secrets and money and cold calculation, humanity was just another commodity to be exploited. The truth had revealed itself tonight in brutal clarity. It started with a phone call, one I wasn't supposed to overhear. Elena's voice drifting through the library door, sharp and businesslike. Sebastian needs this resolved. The wife knows nothing. She's too weak, too desperate to ask questions. Just get her to sign the documents and we'll be done with this mess. Documents? What documents? Sign away what? When I had dared, finally dared after 10 years of silence, to ask Elena what she meant, her face had transformed. Rage I had never seen before, not even in her worst moments. She had grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise and dragged me to the front door. That's when the suitcase came flying. When the insults began. When Richard turned his face away and let it happen. Delta stirred against me now, whimpering softly. Oh, I stroked her damp hair and whispered lies about everything being okay. But we both knew the truth. We had nowhere to go. No money, no family, no plan. The rain intensified, cascading off the awning in sheets. I pulled Delta closer, trying to shield her from the cold, from the reality of our situation, from the knowledge that her mother had failed to protect her. Then, headlights, cutting through the rain like searchlights, slowing as they approached. My heart seized. Were the Coles sending someone to finish what they'd started? To make sure we truly disappeared? The car was expensive, sleek and black, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong in this neighborhood. It rolled to a stop directly in front of us, the engine purring with quiet power. I held Delta tighter, preparing to run. But where? We had nowhere left to go. The rear window descended with a soft mechanical hum. And then I saw her. Mary Cole, Hakimi's sister. The daughter Elena claimed was dead, the girl who had vanished from family photos and Christmas dinners 7 years before Hakimi disappeared. She looked different, harder, wealthier. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, her makeup flawless despite the late hour. Diamond earrings caught the streetlight. Everything about her screamed power and control. Our eyes met through the rain. Hers were unreadable. She didn't smile, didn't explain, didn't offer comfort or sympathy. She simply spoke 2 words that would change everything. Get in. I stared at Mary Cole through the rain-streaked window, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. This couldn't be real. Mary was gone. Dead, according to Elena. Estranged and never spoken of, according to the few whispered conversations I'd overheard over the years. Yet here she sat, alive and impossibly composed, waiting for an answer I couldn't form. Jessie! Her voice cut through my paralysis, sharp and businesslike. Get in the car, now! Delta stirred against me, and that small movement broke the spell. Whatever this was, hallucination, trap, miracle, it had to be better than freezing to death on a street corner. I grabbed my ruined suitcase with one hand, held Delta with the other, and stumbled toward the car. The door opened from the inside. Warm air rushed out, carrying the scent of leather and expensive perfume. I climbed in awkwardly, Delta still clinging to me, and the door closed with a solid final sound that sealed us into another world entirely. Mary sat across from us in the spacious rear cabin, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. She looked nothing like the girl in the few old photographs I'd glimpsed hidden in Hakimi's things. That Mary had been soft, laughing, wearing college sweatshirts and bright smiles. This Mary wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I'd earned in the past year. Her nails were manicured, her jewelry understated, but clearly valuable. Everything about her screamed power and control. She had transformed into someone who belonged in boardrooms and penthouses, not in the chaotic wreckage of the Cole family drama. You're alive, I whispered stupidly, very observant. Her tone was dry, almost mocking. She tapped on the privacy screen, and the car began to move, gliding through the storm with barely a sound. I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt afraid. The silence stretched between us as the car navigated through rain-slicked streets. Delta had gone quiet, her eyes wide and watchful, sensing the tension. Mary studied us both with clinical detachment, and I fought the urge to demand explanations, to scream questions about where she'd been and why she'd appeared now. Finally, she spoke. You're wondering why I left. It wasn't a question. I nodded anyway. 17 years ago, I told Richard and Elena exactly what they were. Mary's voice was cold, controlled. I told them they were parasites, that their obsession with money and status was destroying everything decent in our family, that I wouldn't be part of their schemes anymore. She paused, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Elena slapped me across the face and told me I was selfish, ungrateful. Richard just stood there, silent as always, letting it happen. They gave me a choice. Fall in line or get out. So I got out. The memory seemed to cost her something, though her expression never changed. I was 21. I had nothing but a business degree and rage. I built everything you see from scratch, and I never looked back. Then why are you here now? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Mary's eyes locked onto mine. Because Hakimi made the same mistake I did. He challenged them. He refused to sign documents that would have transferred family property to Sebastian Vance to cover their gambling debts and bad investments. And then she stopped abruptly, her control slipping for just a moment. My heart hammered against my ribs. And then what? And then he disappeared. The words were flat, factual, just like they wanted me to disappear. The difference is, I had resources. Hakimi didn't know what was coming. The implication hung in the air like poison. I pulled Delta closer, my mind reeling. You're saying your own parents. I'm saying you were never safe in that house, Jesse. Mary's voice cut through my denial like a scalpel. Not you. Not Delta. You were useful to them for a while. A free servant and a shield against questions about their missing son. But the moment you became inconvenient, they discarded you. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of her. Not when she sat there so composed, so distant, like this was all just another business transaction. The car turned into an underground garage, all concrete and fluorescent lights. Security cameras tracked our movement. A guard nodded at Mary as we passed. We rode an elevator in silence, Delta heavy in my arms, exhaustion finally claiming her. Mary's apartment was enormous, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture. She gestured toward a bedroom. Put her down. She's safe here. I carried Delta to the bed, tucking her under soft blankets that probably cost more than our entire wardrobe. She didn't wake, her small face peaceful for the first time in hours. I stood there watching her breathe, trying to reconcile the horror of the night with this strange sanctuary. When I returned to the living room, Mary was pouring whiskey into 2 glasses. She handed me one without asking if I wanted it. How long have you known? I asked. About Hakimi? I've been investigating for 7 years. Mary took a sip, her eyes never leaving mine. Since the day I realized he hadn't just abandoned his family. Since I started finding the gaps in the story, the inconsistencies, the money trails that didn't add up. 7 years. The number felt impossible. And you never contacted me? I needed evidence, not emotion. And I needed to know if you were complicit or just tragically naive. Her bluntness was like a slap. Which am I? Naive. No hesitation. But you're learning fast. I drank the whiskey, feeling it burn down my throat. What did you find? Mary set down her glass, and for the first time something flickered in her eyes. Not quite sympathy. Maybe respect. Jesse, your husband didn't disappear. Her voice was steady, certain, devastating. Hakimi was erased. Deliberately, methodically, and I'm going to prove exactly who did it and why. She pulled out a tablet, her fingers moving across the screen. But first, you need to understand what you've been living with all these years. You need to see the truth. The screen illuminated her face as she turned it toward me, and I knew whatever came next would destroy the last remnants of the life I thought I'd known. Are you ready? Mary asked. I wasn't. But I nodded anyway, because the only thing worse than knowing the truth would be living another day in their lies. Mary tapped the screen, and the apartment filled with voices I knew too well. Elena's voice crackled through the tablet speakers, sharp and agitated. We don't have a choice anymore, Richard. Sebastian is done waiting. He wants the land transfer completed by the end of the month, or he'll expose everything. My breath caught. The recording quality was poor, muffled, like it had been captured through a wall or door. But there was no mistaking that voice. I'd heard it criticize my cooking, my clothes, my existence for 10 years. Richard's response was quieter, resigned. The boy won't sign. You know Hakimi. He's got his mother's stubborn streak. He'll never agree to fraudulent documents. Then we make him irrelevant. Elena's words were ice cold. Sebastian has methods. We've already taken too much from his operations. The gambling debts alone. 300,000, Richard interrupted, plus the investments that went south. Sebastian covered it all, and now he owns us. I sank onto Mary's pristine white sofa, my legs refusing to hold me. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of manipulation, a twisted lie. But Mary's face told me otherwise. She watched me with clinical precision, measuring my reaction like a scientist observing an experiment. When was this recorded? My voice cracked. 2 weeks before Hakimi disappeared. Mary paused the audio. I had a private investigator plant listening devices in the house 6 months before that. It took time to get enough evidence. She swiped to another file, and spreadsheets filled the screen. Numbers, dates, transactions. Red highlighting marked the damning entries. Your in-laws were living far beyond their means for years, Mary explained, her tone matter-of-fact. Richard's investments in tech startups failed spectacularly. Elena developed a gambling problem. High-stakes poker games at Sebastian Vance's private clubs. They were hemorrhaging money they didn't have. I stared at the figures. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money I'd never seen, never benefited from, while I scraped by on cafeteria wages and handed over every penny. Sebastian Vance is a real estate developer with connections to organized crime, Mary continued. He's been systematically acquiring property in the Northwest Corridor for a commercial development project. The Cole family owned 12 acres of prime land in that exact area. Land that Hakimi inherited from our grandmother. My hands trembled. Hakimi never mentioned, because he didn't know until Sebastian approached Richard directly. Mary pulled up another document. This is the land transfer agreement. I would have sold the property for 1/3 of its actual value, enough to cover their debts to Sebastian, but leaving the family with nothing. Hakimi's signature was required because grandmother's will specified he had sole ownership. She played another recording. This one was clearer, more recent based on the audio quality. Sebastian Vance's voice was smooth, cultured, terrifying in its calm rationality. Richard, I've been patient, but patience has limits. Your son needs to understand the consequences of his obstinacy. People who interfere with my business ventures tend to have unfortunate accidents. He'll sign. Elena's voice, desperate now. Just give us more time. We'll convince him. Time expired 3 days ago. Sebastian's laugh was soft, almost gentle. Handle your family problem, or I'll handle it for you. Permanently. The recording ended. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. 10 years. 10 years I'd mourned Hakimi. Believed he'd abandoned us. Questioned what I'd done wrong to make him leave. And all along, no. The word burst from me. No, you're lying. They wouldn't. They're his parents. They couldn't. Jesse. Mary's voice cut through my denial. Look at me. I did. Tears streaming down my face now, no longer able to hold them back. I spent 7 years investigating because I needed to be absolutely certain before I showed you this, she said. I hired private detectives. I bribed Sebastian's employees. I traced money through offshore accounts and shell corporations. Everything points to the same conclusion. She pulled up photographs. Elena entering a casino. Richard meeting with Sebastian in parking garages. Bank statements showing massive wire transfers. They sacrificed their own son to save themselves. Mary stated flatly, the question isn't whether they're guilty. The question is whether Hakimi is dead or just hidden. The word dead hit me like a physical blow. I doubled over, gasping, the whiskey threatening to come back up. I don't know if they killed him themselves or if Sebastian handled it, Mary continued, relentless in her honesty. The police reports say he vanished during a business trip to Chicago. His rental car was found at O'Hare Airport. His phone went dead. No body was ever recovered, which means either he's buried somewhere we'll never find him or... Or what? I choked out. Or he's alive and being held somewhere. Leverage. Insurance. Sebastian Vance doesn't waste assets. The room tilted. Mary grabbed my arm, steadying me, and for the first time her touch held something almost human. Almost kind. Why didn't you go to the police? I demanded. If you have all this evidence. Because Sebastian Vance owns half the police department. Mary's expression hardened. And because evidence of conspiracy isn't evidence of murder. Audio recordings can be disputed. Financial records prove debt, not homicide. Without a body, without a witness, without something concrete, we have nothing that would put them behind bars. Then what's the point? I was shouting now, all the grief and rage of 10 years pouring out. What's the point of knowing if we can't do anything? Mary's eyes flashed. The point is we're going to find proof. Real proof. The kind that destroys them completely. She pulled up one final image. A photograph of a small wooden box, unornately carved, sitting on a shelf. Hakimi sent me a message 3 days before he disappeared, Mary said quietly. Just 3 words. Check the box. It's hidden in his childhood bedroom at the house, and whatever's inside might be the evidence we need. I stared at the photograph, my mind racing. Return to that house. Face Elena and Richard knowing what I knew now. You want me to go back there, I whispered. I can't go, Mary said. They'd never let me through the door. But they think you're broken, desperate. They'd believe you came crawling back, begging for forgiveness. I can't. But even as I said it, I knew I would. Jessie, listen to me. Mary gripped both my shoulders, forcing me to meet her eyes. Your husband didn't abandon you. He didn't leave because he stopped loving you, or Delta. He was destroyed by his own parents to pay off their debts. And if there's any chance at all, that he's still alive, that box is where we start. The truth settled over me like a funeral shroud. Elena and Richard Cole had sold their son. Whether they'd killed him or simply let him be taken, the result was the same. They'd murdered the man I loved. And they'd let me suffer for it, year after year, turning me into a servant in my own grief. Something inside me crystallized, hardened, changed. When do we go? I asked. Mary smiled for the first time. It wasn't warm. It was predatory. Tomorrow. We plan tonight, and tomorrow you walk back into hell. But this time, you're not the victim anymore. I nodded, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. Delta was safe. The truth was exposed. And now, finally, I had a purpose beyond mere survival. I would find that box. I would find the proof. And I would make them pay for every single lie. What secrets had Hakimi hidden in that wooden box? And could I really walk back into the Cole house knowing what I knew? The next 24 hours would determine everything. Stay with me. The real fight is just beginning. We sat at Mary's glass dining table until dawn broke over the city, planning my return to hell. Mary had pulled out everything. Blueprints of the Cole house she'd somehow acquired. Photographs of room layouts, even the security system specifications. She'd been preparing for this moment far longer than I'd known she existed. Hakimi's message was simple, Mary said, spreading out a printed email across the table. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., 3 days before he vanished. 3 words. Check the box. And then a single emoji, a house. He knew I'd understand. He meant the memory box our grandmother gave him when he was 12. I leaned closer, studying Hakimi's email address, the familiar string of letters and numbers I used to see on our shared laptop. What's in the box? I don't know, but Hakimi was meticulous. If he hid something there, it's evidence. Something concrete enough to matter. Mary's finger traced the blueprint, stopping at a second-floor bedroom. It used to sit on the bookshelf in his room, but Elena converted that space into a sewing room years ago. The box could be anywhere now. Closet, attic, storage, even thrown away. The thought of Elena discarding Hakimi's belongings made my stomach turn. And if it's gone, then we find another way. Mary's certainty was almost frightening, but I don't think she threw it out. Elena is sentimental about appearances. She'd keep his things to maintain the illusion of the grieving mother. I stared at the blueprint, at the house where I'd spent a decade of my life. The layout was burned into my memory. Every creaking floorboard, every locked door, every corner where I'd hidden to cry. I'll do it, I heard myself say. I'll go back. Mary studied me with those calculating eyes. You understand what you're walking into? They threw you out 12 hours ago. If you show up begging to return, they'll be suspicious. Let them be suspicious. My voice was steadier than I felt. I've spent 10 years being exactly what they wanted. Submissive, grateful, pathetic. I can do it one more time. This isn't about pride anymore, Jessie. This is about survival. Mary leaned forward, her intensity almost physical. Sebastian Vance is connected to people who make problems disappear. If Elena or Richard suspect you know something, if they even hint to Sebastian that you're a threat, then I'll be careful. I met her gaze without flinching. But I'm not running anymore. Hakimi deserves better than that. Delta deserves better. Something shifted in Mary's expression. Not quite approval, but close. All right, then we do this properly. She pulled out a burner phone and a small recording device. Here's how it works. You go back tomorrow afternoon. Not too early. Not desperate enough to seem staged. You tell them you have nowhere else to go. You beg. You cry if you need to. You let Elena believe she's won. And then, you wait until night. Elena takes sleeping pills. She has for years. Richard usually falls asleep in front of the television by 10. You search Hakimi's old room first, then expand if needed. The security system is basic. Cameras at the front and back doors, but nothing inside. Stay away from windows. Mary demonstrated the recording device, smaller than a matchbox. Keep this on you. If you find anything, document it. Take photos. Record audio if there are papers you can't remove. And if anything goes wrong, anything, you run. Don't try to be a hero. We rehearsed for hours. My cover story, my body language, the exact words I'd use to grovel and plead. Mary was ruthless, making me repeat phrases until they sounded natural, until the submission felt real enough to fool anyone. Remember, she said during a break, Elena will test you. She'll say something cruel to see if you break character. Don't defend yourself. Don't show anger. Just take it. I've had 10 years of practice. This is different. Before, you believed you deserved it. Now you know you don't. That anger will show if you're not careful. She was right. The rage simmering beneath my skin was new, dangerous, barely contained. I'd have to bury it deep. By the time the sun climbed high enough to stream through Mary's windows, we had a plan. Delta would stay with Mary, hidden away in this fortress apartment where Elena and Richard could never reach her. I would return to the Cole house alone, broken and desperate, and I would find that box. I checked on Delta one last time before leaving. She was still asleep, curled around a stuffed rabbit Mary had produced from somewhere. So small, so innocent, so completely unaware that her mother was about to walk back into the lion's den. I kissed her forehead and whispered a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. I'll come back. I swear, I'll come back. Mary drove me to within 2 blocks of the Cole house and parked. Last chance to change your mind. I'm not changing my mind. She handed me a small panic button disguised as a keychain. Press this if you're in immediate danger. I'll have people nearby. I pocketed it, grabbed my pathetic water-damaged suitcase from the trunk, and stepped out into the afternoon heat. The storm had passed, leaving everything wet and steaming. I walked the final block slowly, rehearsing my lines, forcing my shoulders to slump, my steps to drag. The Cole house loomed ahead, its perfect facade hiding all the rot beneath. The gate I'd been thrown out of last night stood closed, but not locked. I pushed it open, the hinges creaking like a warning. My hands shook as I approached the front door. I raised my fist to knock, then paused. This was it. Once I crossed this threshold, there was no turning back. I'd be inside their world again, surrounded by people who'd destroyed everything I loved. But Hakimi was worth it. The truth was worth it. I knocked. Footsteps approached from inside. The door opened, and Elena stood there, her expression a mixture of surprise and contempt. She'd been expecting me. I could see it in her eyes. But she'd expected me to take longer to break. Jessie! My name was acid on her tongue. What are you doing here? I let my voice crack, and tears filled my eyes. It wasn't hard. Please. I have nowhere else to go. Delta and we need help. I'll do anything. Just please. Mrs. Cole, I'm begging you. Elena's smile was slow, victorious, cruel. Anything? Anything. She stepped aside, her gesture almost gracious. Well then, I suppose we can discuss terms. Come in. I picked up my suitcase and stepped over the threshold, into the cold foyer, back into the house that had been my prison. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Elena studied me with those calculating eyes, and I forced myself to look down, submissive, defeated. You'll sleep in the basement, she said finally. And starting tomorrow, you'll resume your duties. No pay this time. Room and board is generous enough given your behavior last night. Is that understood? Yes, Mrs. Cole. Thank you, Mrs. Cole. Good. She turned away, already dismissing me. Go put your things away. Dinner is at 6. You'll serve, naturally. I nodded and headed toward the basement stairs, my heart hammering so hard I thought she might hear it. But she didn't stop me, didn't question further. She believed I was broken. She had no idea what I'd really come here to find. I was back inside the Cole house, surrounded by the people who destroyed my husband. Tonight, I would search for Hakimi's hidden box. Tonight I would find the truth, or die trying. What secrets had he left behind? The answer was somewhere in these walls, and I wouldn't leave until I found it. Dinner was a performance I'd mastered years ago. I served Elena's roasted chicken with trembling hands, careful to pour her wine at precisely the right angle. I kept my eyes down, my voice soft, my movements deferential. But when she criticized the seasoning, too much salt, not enough herbs, why couldn't I ever get it right? I apologized profusely and promised to do better. You're lucky we're giving you another chance, Elena said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. Most families wouldn't be so forgiving. I know, Mrs. Cole. Thank you for your generosity. The words tasted like poison, but I forced them out sweetly. Richard ate in silence, as always. But I caught him watching me occasionally, something calculating in his eyes. Did he suspect? Or was this just his usual contempt for the daughter-in-law who'd overstayed her welcome? I cleared the dishes, washed them by hand the way Eleanor preferred, and retreated to the basement as soon as I was dismissed. The concrete walls pressed in around me, the single bulb casting harsh shadows. My old prison. But tonight, it was just a waiting room. I lay on the narrow cot, still fully dressed, and watched the ceiling, listening, tracking their movements through the familiar sounds of the house settling into night. Elena's footsteps on the stairs at 9:30. Her bathroom routine. Richard's television volume lowering at 10:15. The house creaking and sighing as it always did after dark. At 11 o'clock, I heard Elena's bedroom door close with finality. I waited another 30 minutes, counting each second, my heart rate climbing with every passing minute. The recording device Mary had given me was tucked in my bra, the panic button in my pocket. My phone was on silent, positioned where I could see Mary's signal, one text that would mean she'd created the distraction we'd planned. At 11:32, my phone screen lit up. Now, I moved. The basement stairs didn't creak if you stayed close to the wall. I'd learned that years ago, sneaking up late at night to get water without waking Elena's wrath. I climbed slowly, carefully, each step deliberate. The hallway was dark except for the night light near the bathroom. Shadows pooled in corners. I could hear Richard snoring from the master bedroom, deep, rhythmic, the sound of a man in deep sleep aided by his nightly whiskey. Hakimi's old room was at the end of the hall. Elena's sewing room now. I approached the door and tested the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. Elena locked everything she considered hers. I pulled the hairpin from my pocket, the one Mary had given me with quick instructions I'd practiced a dozen times on her apartment doors. My hands shook as I inserted it into the lock, feeling for the pins, applying pressure the way she'd shown me. Nothing. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Come on, come on. The lock clicked. I froze, listening for any change in the house's rhythm. Richard's snoring continued. No footsteps, no voices. I pushed the door open and slipped inside, closing it silently behind me. The room smelled like fabric and dust. Elena's sewing machine dominated one corner, surrounded by bins of material and thread. Hakimi's old bookshelf was still there, but empty now, just bare wood where his books and trophies used to sit. I scanned the shelves with my phone's flashlight, searching for the carved wooden box Mary had described. Nothing. The closet yielded only Elena's fabric collection. Under the sewing table. Empty. Panic rose in my throat. What if she'd thrown it away? What if this entire dangerous plan was for nothing? I checked the shelf again, running my hands along the back. My fingers touched something, a gap between the shelf and the wall. I wedged my hand in and felt wood. Carved wood. The box. It was wedged behind the bookshelf, deliberately hidden. I pulled carefully, trying not to make noise as it scraped against wood. Almost there. Almost! Footsteps in the hallway. My blood turned to ice. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Not Richard's heavy tread, Elena's lighter step. She was awake. She was coming this way. I shoved the box back and looked frantically for a hiding place. The closet. Too obvious. Under the sewing table, she'd see me immediately. Behind the door, the footsteps stopped outside the room. I held my breath, pressing myself against the wall beside a tall storage cabinet. Through the crack in the door, I could see Elena's shadow in the hallway. She was standing there, just standing, listening. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Mary's distraction. A loud crash echoed from downstairs, glass breaking, something heavy hitting the floor. Elena's shadow shifted, and I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Richard!" she called out, her voice cutting through the silence. "Richard! Wake up! Someone's downstairs!" Her footsteps retreated rapidly toward the master bedroom. Richard's snoring stopped abruptly. Voices, urgent and frightened. More footsteps, both of them now, heading for the stairs. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the box from behind the shelf, heavier than expected, about the size of a shoebox, and tucked it under my arm. The recording device captured everything, the weight of it against my ribs a small comfort. I cracked the door open. The hallway was empty. I could hear Elena and Richard downstairs, their voices raised in confusion and alarm. Mary must have thrown a brick through the kitchen window, or something equally dramatic. I moved fast, staying low, racing back toward the basement stairs. If they caught me now, If they saw me with this box. A floorboard creaked under my foot. I froze, but the noise downstairs covered it. Glass being swept up. Elena demanding Richard call the police. Richard insisting it was probably just neighborhood kids. I made it to the basement stairs and descended into darkness. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the box. I shoved it into my suitcase, buried it under clothes, and zipped it shut just as I heard footsteps above me. The basement door opened. "Jesse," Elena's voice, sharp with suspicion. I grabbed my phone and blinked my eyes rapidly, trying to look like I'd just been woken up. "Mrs. Cole, what's wrong? I heard a crash." She appeared at the top of the stairs, backlit and intimidating. "Someone threw something through the kitchen window. You didn't hear anything?" I was asleep. Just now woke up from the noise. I made my voice small, frightened. "Should I come help clean up?" She studied me for a long moment. Too long. My heart hammered against my ribs, the recording device feeling suddenly enormous and obvious. "No," she said finally. "Go back to sleep. We'll handle it." The door closed. I waited in darkness, counting to 1,000 before I moved. My entire body trembled with adrenaline. I pulled the suitcase onto the cot and carefully extracted the box. It was beautiful. Intricately carved mahogany with Hakimi's initials inlaid in brass on the lid. I ran my fingers over the letters, remembering his hands, his smile, his voice. What had he hidden inside? What was so important he'd risked everything to preserve it? I wanted to open it immediately, but Mary's instructions had been clear. Get the box, get out, bring it to her apartment. Don't open it in the house. Don't risk them discovering what's inside. I tucked it back into the suitcase and lay down on the cot, fully dressed, waiting for morning. Waiting for my chance to escape with the evidence that might finally reveal what happened to my husband. Upstairs, I could hear Elena and Richard arguing about whether to call the police. Elena wanted to file a report. Richard said it wasn't worth the trouble. Neither of them suspected the real crime had just occurred under their roof. I'd infiltrated their fortress. I'd stolen back what they'd tried to hide. And tomorrow, I'd walk out of this house for the final time, not as a victim, but as the woman who would destroy them. I had Hakimi's memory box. Whatever secrets it contained could change everything. Proof of conspiracy, evidence of murder, or something even more devastating. But first, I had to survive until morning and escape without raising Elena's suspicions. What would I find inside that carved wooden box? The answer would either save us or destroy us all. I waited until 6 a.m. to slip out of the Cole house. Elena was already awake. I could hear her moving around upstairs. But she didn't stop me when I claimed I needed to run an early errand. She barely looked up from her coffee, on dismissing me with a wave that said I was beneath her notice. Good. Let her think I was broken and obedient. Let her think she'd won. I walked the 2 blocks to where Mary's car was waiting, climbed in without a word, and we drove in tense silence back to her apartment. Delta was still asleep when we arrived, safe and untouched by the danger I'd just walked through. Mary cleared her dining table and set the wooden box in the center like a sacred artifact. "You did it," she said quietly. There was something close to admiration in her voice. Let's see if it was worth it. My hands trembled as I reached for the brass clasp. The box opened with a soft creak. Inside, the past stared back at me. Photographs first. So many photographs. Hakimi as a child, grinning gap-toothed at the camera. Hakimi in his high school graduation gown, Aunt Mary beside him, both of them young and hopeful and whole. Our wedding photo. I picked it up with shaking hands, remembering that day, the way he'd looked at me like I was his entire world. Beneath the photos, letters, his grandmother's handwriting, shaky but elegant, telling him how proud she was. A birthday card from Mary from years ago, before their family imploded. A letter I'd written him during our engagement, full of dreams and promises. Tears blurred my vision. This was his life, condensed into a box he'd known he might lose. Mary reached past me and lifted the wedding photo. "Jesse! Look!" Something was taped to the back. A small SD card, barely the size of my thumbnail. My breath caught. Mary already had her laptop open, sliding the card into a reader before I could process what we'd found. The screen flickered, and folders appeared. Video files, audio recordings, documents. Mary clicked on the first video. Hakimi's face filled the screen. I made a sound I didn't recognize, something between a sob and a gasp. He looked tired, older than I remembered, shadows under his eyes. But it was him, my husband, alive in this moment, preserved in digital memory. If you're watching this, something has gone very wrong. His voice cracked through the laptop speakers, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. Mary, Jesse, whoever found this, I need you to understand what's happening. He glanced off camera, nervous. My parents are in debt to Sebastian Vance. Serious debt. Hundreds of thousands in gambling losses and failed investments. Sebastian wants our family land, grandmother's land, and he's using their debt as leverage. Mary and I exchanged glances. Everything we'd suspected. Confirmed in Hakimi's own words. "They've been pressuring me to sign transfer documents," Hakimi continued. "Fraudulent documents that undervalue the property by at least $2 million. I refused. I told them I'd go to the authorities, expose Sebastian's operation. That's when things got dangerous." He pulled out his phone and held it up to the camera. "I've been recording conversations, threats, evidence of money laundering through Sebastian's construction business. It's all here." Mary clicked to the next file. Audio recording, dated 3 days before Hakimi disappeared. Sebastian Vance's voice, smooth and terrifying in its calm. "Hakimi, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Your parents' debt can disappear. You can walk away from this. All you have to do is sign." "I'm not signing fraudulent documents." Hakimi's voice, firm despite the fear I could hear underneath. "Then you're choosing the hard way." Sebastian's tone didn't change, but the menace was unmistakable. People who interfere with my business tend to have accidents. Tragic, unavoidable accidents. Are you prepared for your wife to become a widow? Your daughter to grow up without a father? My hand flew to my mouth. Delta. He'd threatened Delta. "You're threatening my family?" Hakimi's voice shook with rage now. "I'm stating facts." "Your parents understand the situation. Perhaps you should discuss this with them. They're more realistic about your options." The recording ended. Mary opened another file. This one was a phone conversation, the video showing Hakimi's tense face as he held his phone on speaker. Richard's voice came through, weary and resigned. "Son, just sign the papers. This doesn't have to be complicated." "Dad, these documents are fraudulent. Sebastian is stealing from us." "We don't have a choice anymore." Richard's voice hardened. "We took his money. We made promises. If we don't deliver what? He kills me." Hakimi's laugh was bitter. "Is that what you're saying? You'd rather sacrifice me than face the consequences of your own mistakes?" Silence on the other end. Long, damning silence. "Dad, answer me." "Your mother and I have worked too hard to lose everything." Richard's words were ice. "If you won't help his family, then you're the problem. I'm not the solution." The call ended. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face unchecked. Mary's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. "There's more," she said quietly, clicking to the final video file. Hakimi appeared again, but this time he looked directly into the camera, and I knew he was speaking to me. "Jesse." My name and his voice, after 10 years of silence, broke something inside me. "Baby, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to be part of this. I never wanted you to suffer for my family's sins. He wiped his eyes roughly. I'm going to Chicago tomorrow to meet with federal investigators. I have evidence of Sebastian's money laundering operation, proof of my parents' involvement. If this works, we'll be free. If it doesn't, his voice cracked. If it doesn't, you need to take Delta and run. Don't trust my parents. Don't stay in that house. They chose their survival over mine, and they won't hesitate to do the same to you. He's leaned closer to the camera. I love you. I have always loved you. Take care of our daughter. Tell her I tried to do the right thing. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't protect her the way I should have. The video ended. The silence in Mary's apartment was absolute. I stared at the frozen image of my husband's face. The man I'd mourned for 10 years. The man who'd tried to save us all and paid the ultimate price. He never made it to Chicago, Mary said finally. His rental car was found at the airport, but there's no record of him boarding any flight. His phone pinged from a cell tower near the Indiana state line, then went dead permanently. They killed him. The words came out flat, factual. His own parents helped Sebastian Vance kill him. We don't know that he's dead. Mary's voice was gentle for the first time. Missing isn't the same as murdered. Sebastian is smart. He might have kept Hakimi alive as insurance, leverage, collateral. For 10 years? I looked at her, desperate for hope, terrified of it. Stranger things have happened. But regardless, Mary gestured to the laptop. This is proof. Real proof. Hakimi documented everything. Threats, conspiracy, his parents' betrayal. This is what we need to destroy them. I looked down at the SD card, this tiny piece of technology that contained the truth I'd been denied for a decade. Hakimi had known. He'd prepared. He'd tried to warn me, tried to protect us, and they'd erased him for it. But he'd left behind evidence. He'd left behind hope. What do we do now? I asked. Mary's smile was cold and determined. Now we take this to someone who can actually hurt them. Someone Sebastian Vance can't buy or intimidate. She pulled up a contact on her phone, and I saw the name. FBI, Financial Crimes Division. We go to war, Mary said. Hakimi had given us everything we needed to expose the conspiracy. Recordings, threats, proof of his parents' betrayal. But bringing down Sebastian Vance and the Cole family wouldn't be simple. They had money, connections, and nothing left to lose. The question was, did we have the courage to see this through to the end? And would we find Hakimi alive, or finally learn the truth of what they'd done to him? Mary spent the next 2 days buried in Hakimi's files, cross-referencing every document, every recording, building an airtight case. I watched her work with relentless precision, her fingers flying across the keyboard, highlighters marking critical passages in printed transcripts. There's another layer here, she said on the third morning, pulling up a series of encrypted files Hakimi had buried deep in the ESD card's directory structure. Financial records, bank transfers, shell corporations. She worked through the encryption. Apparently corporate espionage skills were part of her repertoire, and spreadsheets bloomed across her screen. Numbers, dates, account numbers traced through the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Cyprus. He didn't just record conversations, Mary breathed, her eyes scanning the data. He copied their entire financial infrastructure. Sebastian's money laundering operation. The Cole family's involvement. Everything. Is it enough? I asked. It's more than enough. With this, we can... She stopped mid-sentence, her gaze shifting to the window. What? That car. Mary pointed to a black sedan parked across the street. It's been there for an hour. Same car that was there yesterday afternoon. My stomach dropped. You think they're watching us? I know they are. Mary closed her laptop and moved away from the window. Sebastian didn't get where he is by being careless. He has people everywhere. Cops, city officials, private investigators. If Elena or Richard mentioned anything about you asking questions, about you acting strange. I was careful. Careful isn't invisible. She pulled out her phone, swiping through security camera feeds. There. 2 men in the lobby this morning, asking the doorman about residents. And there. Another swipe. A van parked in the alley behind the building. No company markings, windows tinted. The walls of her fortress apartment suddenly felt thin as paper. We need to move faster, Mary said, her voice tight with controlled urgency. I was planning to spend another week building the case before approaching the FBI, but if Sebastian knows we're digging, what happens if he knows? But I already understood. Hakimi's warnings echoed in my memory. People who interfere with my business tend to have accidents. Mary's expression confirmed my fear. He makes us disappear, professionally, permanently, and then he destroys any evidence we've gathered. Delta. The thought of my daughter, still sleeping peacefully in the guest room, being targeted by these people made my blood run cold. So what do we do? Mary was already moving, pulling out burner phones, external hard drives, making copies of everything. We split up the evidence, multiple locations, multiple formats, cloud storage, physical drives, trusted contacts. If something happens to us, the information still gets out. She worked with military efficiency, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. For the first time since I'd met her, Mary looked worried. There's one more thing we need, she said, uploading files to an encrypted server. The original documents. Hakimi mentioned in his notes that Sebastian keeps the actual signed contracts, the real financial records, in a USB drive at his office. Everything we have is copies, recordings, circumstantial. But those originals, you want to break into Sebastian Vance's office. It wasn't a question. I want to end this. Completely. No appeals, no legal loopholes, no bought judges letting him walk. We need evidence so damning that even his connections can't save him. The black sedan was still outside. As I watched, a second car pulled up behind it. Men in suits climbed out, their movements coordinated, professional. Mary. My voice was steady despite my fear. They're coming. She looked, her jaw setting. Good. Let them come to the front door. We're leaving through the service exit. She moved fast, grabbing go bags she'd apparently prepared, tossing me one. Clothes, cash, fake IDs. I've had these ready since I started investigating. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. We woke Delta gently, told her we were going on an adventure, kept our voices calm even as my heart raced. Mary led us through the building's maintenance corridors, past surprised janitors and confused residents, down service elevators I didn't know existed. We emerged 3 blocks away, in an underground parking garage where Mary kept a second car, a nondescript gray Honda, nothing like her usual luxury vehicles. Where are we going? I asked, as she pulled into traffic. Somewhere they won't think to look. She handed me a phone. Call this number. Tell them Mary sent you. They'll arrange a safe house. Who are they? People who owe me favors. Corporate competitors of Sebastian, who'd love to see him destroyed. Ex-employees with grudges. I've been building a network for years, Jesse. I told you, I don't do anything halfway. The safe house turned out to be a suburban rental 40 minutes outside the city. Generic and forgettable. Delta thought it was exciting. A secret hideout, like in her storybooks. I didn't have the heart to tell her the danger was real. That night, after Delta fell asleep, Mary spread blueprints across the kitchen table. Sebastian Vance's office building. Security systems, guard rotations, floor plans. This is insane, I said, staring at the security specifications. Armed guards, biometric locks, cameras everywhere. We're not trained for this. I am. Mary's voice was calm. I've been preparing for this exact scenario. I have contacts who can disable the security system remotely for exactly 90 seconds. I have inside information on the guard schedules. I know where Sebastian keeps his private files. And if something goes wrong? Then we run. Fast. But Jesse... She met my eyes. This is our only shot. Once the FBI gets involved, everything becomes official. Legal processes, warrants, bureaucracy. Sebastian will have time to destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses, disappear assets. We need those original documents now, while he's still confident enough to keep them close. I thought about Hakimi's recordings, his warnings, his faith that someone would find the truth and act on it. When? I asked. Tomorrow night. Sebastian hosts a charity gala at the Riverside Hotel every year. He'll be there, surrounded by witnesses, maintaining his respectable businessman facade. His office will have minimal security, just the automated systems and 1 or 2 guards. What do you need me to do? Mary smiled, and for the first time I saw genuine warmth in it. I need you to be exactly what you've become. Brave, determined, willing to risk everything for the truth. She pulled out a small earpiece and a compact camera. You'll be my eyes and ears. Stay in the car, monitor the security feeds I'll hack into. Warn me if anything changes. If this works, we'll have everything we need to bury them all. And if it doesn't work? Then we grab Delta and disappear. New identities, new lives, different country. I have contingencies. I held the earpiece, feeling its weight, understanding what we were about to do. Break into a criminal's office, steal evidence, risk arrest or worse. But Hakimi had risked everything for the truth. The least I could do was finish what he started. Tomorrow night, I agreed. Mary nodded, already reviewing guard schedules, timing the operation down to the second. Outside, the suburban street was quiet, peaceful, giving no hint of the storm we were about to unleash. Sebastian Vance thought he was untouchable. He thought his money and his violence had erased every threat. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Tomorrow night, we would infiltrate Sebastian Vance's office and steal the evidence that could destroy him forever. It was reckless, dangerous, probably suicidal, but it was also our only chance to find out what really happened to Hakimi and make his killers pay. The break-in was planned down to the second. All that remained was executing it, and praying we'd live to see the sunrise. The night was moonless, perfect for what we were about to do. I sat in the gray Honda, parked 2 blocks from Sebastian Vance's office building, laptop balanced on my knees, watching security camera feeds flicker across the screen. Mary had infiltrated the building's network remotely, giving me access to every angle, every corridor. Camera 4 shows the guard on the 3rd floor, I whispered into the earpiece. He's moving toward the east stairwell. Copy. Mary's voice was steady in my ear. She was dressed in black, hair pulled back, looking nothing like the polished businesswoman I'd come to know. She looked dangerous, capable. 90 seconds until the security system goes down. Get ready to guide me. My hands shook on the keyboard. Delta was safe with Mary's contact, a former colleague who asked no questions and accepted cash. But knowing my daughter was protected didn't stop the fear crawling up my spine. This was real. We were really doing this. 60 seconds, I said, watching the timer Mary had synced to my screen. On camera 2, I watched Mary approach the building's service entrance. She moved like a shadow, confident and fluid. A lifetime ago, I would have been terrified to attempt something like this. Now, I was the one calling the shots, guiding her through enemy territory. 30 seconds. Guard is in the stairwell. 3rd floor corridor is clear. Lockdown override in 3, 2, 1. Mary's contact's voice crackled through a second channel, and suddenly every camera feed went dark for exactly 2 seconds before flickering back to life. The security system was down, 90 seconds starting now. Mary was already inside, moving fast. I switched to camera 5, watching her sprint down the corridor towards Sebastian's executive suite. 75 seconds. Door ahead, biometric lock, I warned. On it! Mary pulled out a cloned security badge. Stolen credentials from a maintenance worker she'd bribed. The lock clicked green. 60 seconds. She was inside Sebastian's office now, and even through the grainy camera feed, I could see the opulence. Mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, artwork that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Safe is behind the bookshelf, left side, I said, reading from the building schematics Mary had acquired. Third shelf, biography section. 45 seconds. Mary moved the books aside and revealed a wall safe. Her fingers flew across the keypad. Another piece of information purchased from a disgruntled former employee. The safe clicked open. Got it, Mary breathed. She pulled out a USB drive, identical to the one Hakimi had described in his notes. Original contracts, financial records, everything. 30 seconds. That's when the alarm screamed to life. Not the building alarm, a separate system, one we hadn't known about. A fail-safe, triggered by the safe opening, connected to private security, probably directly to Sebastian's phone. Mary, abort. Secondary alarm, they'll be here in minutes. I'm already moving. She shoved the USB drive into her jacket and ran for the door. But I was watching camera 7 now, the main entrance, and my heart stopped. Sebastian Vance was entering the building. Not in a tuxedo from the charity gala like we'd expected. In a business suit, flanked by 2 security guards, moving with purpose directly toward the elevators. Mary, he's here. Sebastian is in the building. He's coming up. What? Genuine shock in her voice. The first time I'd heard her composure crack. He's supposed to be at the gala for another 2 hours. He must have gotten the alarm notification. He's in the elevator now, heading to the 3rd floor. I watched the elevator numbers climb. 2nd floor. Mary was in the stairwell, descending fast, but not fast enough. 3rd floor. The elevator doors opened on my screen, and Sebastian stepped out with his guards. He wasn't running, wasn't panicking. He walked calmly toward his office like a man absolutely certain of his control over every situation. Change of plan! Mary gasped, still running. I'm going out the north fire exit. Bring the car around to Maple Street. I was already moving, slamming the laptop shut, starting the engine. The Honda's tires squealed as I pulled into traffic, racing toward the pickup point. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. Against every instinct, I answered. Hello, Jesse. Sebastian Vance's voice, calm and smooth as poisoned honey. Yes, I know who you are. Did you really think you could break into my office without consequences? My blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. I've been watching you and Mary since you stole that box from the Cole house. Very resourceful of you, I must admit. But resourcefulness without wisdom is just recklessness. I turned onto Maple Street, searching for Mary. Where was she? You have something of mine, Sebastian continued. A USB drive with sensitive business information. I want it back. Now, we can do this the easy way, or... There she is! I spotted Mary sprinting from the fire exit, and I hit the accelerator, pulling up beside her. She dove into the passenger seat, and I floored it before she even closed the door. Or we can do this the hard way, Sebastian's voice finished. I look forward to seeing you very soon, Jesse. You and your daughter. The line went dead. Sirens wailed behind us, growing closer. Police cars, private security, maybe both. Mary was breathing hard, checking the USB drive was still secured in her jacket. He knows about Delta, I said, my voice shaking. I heard. Mary's jaw was set. Turn left here. We need to get back to the safe house. Grab Delta and disappear. Right now. I took the turn too fast, tires protesting. In the rearview mirror, I saw flashing lights gaining on us. They're going to catch us! No, they're not. Mary pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. I've got one more card to play. She made a call, speaking rapid-fire instructions to someone in clipped, professional tones. Target is Sebastian Vance. Everything I sent you, release it now. Every news outlet, every federal agency, every media contact. Burn it all down. She hung up and looked at me. I uploaded copies of everything to my contacts before we left. If Sebastian wants to play hardball, he's about to find out what that actually means. The sirens were right behind us now. I turned onto the highway, weaving through late-night traffic, praying we could make it. That's when I saw him, in the car pulling up beside us in the adjacent lane. Sebastian Vance, in the backseat of a black Mercedes, staring directly at me through the window. Our eyes locked. He smiled, calm, confident, utterly unafraid. Then he raised his hand in a small, almost friendly wave, and his car peeled off toward an exit ramp, disappearing into the night. The police sirens passed us, continuing down the highway toward some other emergency. They weren't chasing us. They'd never been chasing us. It had all been a message, a demonstration of power. Sebastian showing us that he could have caught us any time he wanted, that this was all just a game to him, that he was in control. Mary was pale, staring at the spot where his car had vanished. He let us go. Why would he do that? Because he wants us to know he's not worried. That whatever evidence we have, whatever moves we make, he's 10 steps ahead. She gripped the USB drive like a lifeline. But he made a mistake. He showed his hand. He revealed he knows about us, which means he's worried enough to personally intervene. I drove in silence for a moment, processing everything. What do we do now? Mary looked at the USB drive, then at me. Now we finish this. We take this evidence to the FBI tomorrow. We get Delta somewhere truly safe. And we end Sebastian Vance once and for all. You think we can win? I think Hakimi didn't die for nothing. I think we owe him the truth. And I think Sebastian Vance just made his first real mistake. He underestimated how far we're willing to go. We drove through the night toward the safe house, toward Delta, toward whatever came next. Behind us, the city lights glittered like fall stars, beautiful and deadly. Sebastian Vance had looked me in the eyes and let me see his confidence, his certainty that he would win this war. But he hadn't seen what I saw when I looked back. A mother willing to burn the entire world down to protect her daughter. A widow ready to destroy anyone who'd taken her husband. A woman who'd finally stopped being afraid. Tomorrow, we would take the fight to him. Tomorrow, the truth would finally see daylight. And Sebastian Vance would learn that some people, when pushed far enough, don't break. They explode. We escaped with the evidence, but Sebastian Vance knows who we are. He's seen my face. He's threatened my daughter. The final battle is coming, and only one side will survive. Will we expose the conspiracy that destroyed Hakimi? Will we finally learn if he's alive or dead? And can we defeat a man who controls everything? Police, politicians, power itself. Subscribe and comment below with your theories. The ending will shock you. This is far from over. The USB drive sat on the kitchen table like a loaded gun. We'd made it back to the safe house, grabbed Delta while she was still half asleep, and relocated to a motel 2 cities away. Mary had paid cash, used a fake name, parked the car 3 blocks away, every precaution she could think of. Now, as dawn broke through the cheap curtains, we finally opened the file Sebastian had killed to protect. The screen filled with documents, contracts, financial statements, wire transfers routing through shell corporations in 12 different countries. Money laundering on a scale I couldn't fully comprehend. Hundreds of millions moving through Sebastian's construction business, washing drug money, embezzled funds, proceeds from human trafficking. My God, Mary whispered, scrolling through page after page of evidence. This isn't just fraud. This is a criminal empire. Names appeared throughout the documents. Politicians who'd taken bribes. Police officers on Sebastian's payroll. Judges who dismissed cases in exchange for offshore accounts. The corruption spread like cancer through every level of government. And there, Buried in the financial records were the Cole family transactions. Richard and Elena's gambling debts. The fraudulent land transfer documents. Hakimi's refusal to sign, documented in email exchanges that grew increasingly threatening. Then I saw it. A single line item dated 3 days after Hakimi disappeared. Asset relocation, $500,000. Facility 7B, long-term storage. Mary, my voice cracked. What's Facility 7B? She searched through the files, cross-referencing codes and locations. Her face went pale. It's a private medical facility. Off the books. Sebastian owns it through a shell corporation. Medical facility? Hope and horror warred in my chest. That means it could mean anything. Witness protection for people he's controlling. Medical care for injured associates. Or, she met my eyes, or long-term incapacitation of people who know too much to kill, but too dangerous to release. Long-term storage. The words echoed in my mind. Hakimi could be alive. Alive but imprisoned, drugged, held somewhere we'd never think to look, for 10 years. Or it could be nothing. A coincidence. A different asset entirely. We need to take this to the FBI, Mary said, already copying files to multiple drives. This is enough to bring down Sebastian's entire operation. Federal prosecutors will have no choice but to act. And then what? I looked at Delta, sleeping peacefully on the motel bed, unaware of the storm surrounding her. Sebastian threatened her. You think federal protection will stop him? You think witness protection will keep us safe from someone with this much power? Mary's silence was answer enough. Justice will be dangerous, I said quietly. For all of us. The moment we hand this over, we become targets. Permanently. We're already targets, Jesse. The question is whether we fight back or spend the rest of our lives running. I thought about Hakimi's recordings. His courage. His decision to stand against corruption, even knowing what it might cost. He'd fought for the truth, and they'd erased him for it. But he'd left behind evidence. He'd left behind hope. He'd trusted that someone would finish what he started. We fight, I said. Mary smiled, fierce and proud. Then we contact the FBI at sunrise. We hand over everything, and we prepare for war. She closed the laptop and looked at me with something that might have been respect. You're not the same woman I picked up in the rain. No, I agreed. I'm not. The woman Elena Cole had thrown out like garbage was gone. The submissive daughter-in-law who'd accepted abuse and believed she deserved it had died somewhere between that stormy night and this motel room. In her place was someone harder, someone who'd stolen evidence from a criminal empire, someone who'd looked Sebastian Vance in the eyes and refused to back down, someone who would burn the world to ashes to protect her daughter and find the truth about her husband. Mary, I said quietly. If Hakimi is alive, if he's been in that facility all these years, then we find him. After the FBI moves, after Sebastian is in custody, we find that facility and we get answers. Her voice was steady, certain. I promise you, Jesse, whatever happened to my brother, whatever they did to him, we will know the truth. Delta stirred in her sleep, and I moved to her side, brushing hair from her face. She looked so much like Hakimi. His eyes, his smile, his gentle spirit. This is just the beginning, Mary warned. Even with Sebastian arrested, there will be trials, testimonies, threats. His associates will come after us. The Coles will fight back. The FBI will want us in protective custody. Our lives will never be normal again. Normal was a lie anyway. I looked out the window at the rising sun. Painting the sky in shades of fire. Normal was 10 years of abuse and grief. Normal was believing their lies. I don't want normal. I want truth. Truth has a price. So does silence. Mary nodded slowly, understanding passing between us. We'd crossed a line together, stolen from the devil himself. And there was no going back. Outside, the world was waking up. People heading to work, living ordinary lives, unaware that in this forgettable motel room, two women were preparing to expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power, unaware that Hakimi Cole might still be alive, imprisoned in a facility designed to erase inconvenient witnesses, unaware that justice, when it finally came, would shake everything they thought they knew about their city. I held Delta close and made a silent promise. To her, to Hakimi, to myself. I would find the truth. I would destroy everyone who'd taken my husband and tormented my family. I would make them pay. And if Hakimi was alive, if there was even the smallest chance he'd been waiting all these years for someone to find him, I would move heaven and earth to bring him home. The USB drive held answers, but it also held questions. And some questions, I realized, could only be answered by walking further into the darkness. The evidence was secured. The FBI would move at dawn. But Hakimi's fate remained uncertain, alive in a hidden facility or buried in an unmarked grave. Sebastian Vance's empire was crumbling, but would he go down quietly, or would he take us with him? And could a mother and widow truly defeat the corruption that had destroyed her family? The battle for truth had just begun. If you want to know what happens next, if you want to see Sebastian face justice, if you want to discover whether Hakimi survived, if you want to witness Jesse's final transformation, subscribe now and leave a comment telling me your theory. Is Hakimi alive? Will they find Facility 7B? Can they survive what comes next? The answers will shock you. This story is far from over.